So let's cultivate our motivation and recall that on the one hand, we're only one person. And so from that perspective, making a big deal out of our own happiness and suffering isn't really appropriate because we're only one among many and everybody's in the same boat. On the other hand, as one individual with the Buddha potential, we have great potential and we can really develop ourselves and contribute in a very vast and profound way to the welfare of other living beings. So from that perspective, we should not see ourselves as unworthy of attention. Okay, so what we're getting at is our complaining, our whining, our self-centeredness, that just causes us problems and it's not really appropriate. On the other hand, paying attention to our good qualities, nourishing ourselves, nourishing ourselves in the Dharma, learning the antidotes to the afflictions so that we can subdue them and eventually eliminate them from our mind stream. That is quite important, and paying attention to our own body, speech, and mind in that way is very appropriate. Because if we can avoid harm and be of great service to other living beings. So all this depends on having a motivation of love and compassion for all beings, ourselves and others, and really dedicating our lives to accessing this great potential that we have. And especially since we have the great fortune to meet the Buddha's teachings, to use our potential in a way that brings joy and eliminates misery to all beings. And so for that reason, we aim for full awakening. So I think that it's quite important to hold in our mind in what ways we are important as an individual and in what ways we are not important as an individual. Okay? We often have it upside down and backwards. So like I said in the motivation, in terms of just, I want this, I want that, I need this, I want that. Other people should do this for me, they shouldn't do that for me. All of that we spend so much time on is the wrong way of paying attention to ourselves. Yeah, it just brings a lot of misery. On the other hand, when we see our potential, for example, to cultivate impartial love and compassion for all living beings, Yeah, when we see our potential to know the nature of reality, when we see our potential to develop our unique talents and abilities and share them with the people around us and with society as a whole. In that way, we as one individual we're quite noteworthy, we're quite important, and we need to put energy into developing those talents and abilities. Okay, so that's the healthy way of paying attention to us, to ourselves. Okay, is that making some sense to you? Yeah. It's just the thing is we're just so habituated to moaning and groaning, yeah, and blaming others, and we do that kind of habitually. But if we begin to see how much it causes ourselves and other people misery when we just act like that habitually, then we see, we get enough courage to start counteracting some of these old habits. Yeah, so when we practice the Dharma, we're going to come up against our old habits. Yeah, there's no way to avoid it. So I know when some people come, to a spiritual path, it's like, oh, I want light and love and bliss. And I don't want to hear about, anger and malice and sensual attachment. I want to leave that behind. I want light, love. But the thing is, we're not going to get light and love and bliss without letting go of all the things that obstruct us from from creating the causes for light and love and bliss. Okay? So, as we confront the obstacles and then begin to apply the antidotes, we really start to free ourselves. And that creates a very good feeling within ourselves to start with. It may not be the that we think of, but it becomes a feeling inside of, oh, I'm doing something meaningful. And that brings a lot of peace and joy in our mind. Okay? So when we come to a spiritual path, we're not seeking Disney World 24/7. Okay? So we're seeking something else. I was just asked to write a response for one of the Buddhist magazines. Somebody had said, well, the Buddha and even spiritual mentors like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, they talk a lot about happiness, as a goal of spiritual practice. But isn't that self-serving? That was the question. Yeah. And so here, we have to differentiate different kinds of happiness. And we have to differentiate different ways of taking care of ourselves, or different ways of paying attention to ourselves. Mm-hmm. I thought the question was quite interesting. To me, it really illustrates the how so often when we come to Buddhism, we bring in remnants of growing up in a Christian culture. Yeah. And in a Christian culture, there's the feeling that unless you are suffering, you can't be truly compassionate. Yeah. And it's right there, We've learned since we were little kids, but that's not at all the idea in Buddhism. Yeah. Buddhism talks about fulfilling the purpose of ourselves, our own goal, and fulfilling the purpose or aims of other living beings. Yeah, so it talks about both because we're interrelated. Yeah, self and others depend on each other. So it's not a question of, I'm worthless, and it's not a question of, I'm the most important one in the world, shower the light and love and bliss on me. It's, it's not either of those. Okay. So did you have a good time thinking about sensual desire and malice? Yeah. Anybody not have sensual desire and malice? Anybody free of those? Can you see how they cause you problems in your life? Yeah. How they make you unhappy, how they make you do things that make you not feel good about yourself. Yeah. And so then we really see, oh, okay, the real enemy is not, somebody outside. Now, from a Buddhist viewpoint, the real enemy is our own confused mind, our own grasping desire, our own malice, our own, jealousy and arrogance. Those are the things that are really the origin of our misery, yeah, not other sentient beings. Other sentient beings are kind to us. What? They're kind to me. No, they aren't. They did this and they did this and they did that. Yeah, we can list off all the ways people have hurt us and betrayed our trust and disappointed us. Yeah. But if there weren't other sentient beings, could you stay alive all by yourself? Yeah. None of us could stay alive by ourselves. Yeah, it's impossible. So, we need other living beings. We depend on other living beings. It's because of the effort and work of other living beings that we're able to stay alive and even practice the Dharma. Okay? So it's kind of, we can focus on the glass half full or the glass half empty. Yeah. So we can focus on all the ways sentient beings mistreat us, or we can focus on all the amazing ways they're kind to us. Okay. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. How are these people kind to me? Okay. Anybody here install the fans? Anybody here make this building? A few people supervised it. Yeah. Anybody here make the carpet? Or make the chair you're sitting on? Anybody here make the cloth that your clothes are made from? Anybody make their own glasses? Or their own hearing aids? Yeah? I mean, look, everything we use, everything that helps to make our life comfortable, all comes from the energy of other living beings. Yeah. And these living beings, some of them are in our country, some of them are in other countries. Yeah. Some of them may be the same race, ethnic, religious, gender, all these different identities that we have as we are. And I bet most of the people on whose efforts we depend are not in all those categories exactly the same as us. Yeah. And yet, our whole lives depend on them. So I think it's very important that we really think about this and that we have a big mind. Because when we talk about being of benefit to all sentient beings, it really means all sentient beings. And that means that we have to look beyond external differences. And even internal differences, like different political opinions or different religious beliefs or different social customs. We have to really see that all of us are wanting happiness and not wanting suffering equally. And really, open our hearts to that. So, from a Buddhist viewpoint, it's not me first, or my group first, or my country first, or my, whatever identity we have first. It's all sentient beings first. Okay? Because we depend on all sentient beings. And all of them want happiness, don't want suffering as intensely as we do. So whether we know them or not, we're related to them. Okay, so it's much easier to concentrate in your meditation if you have that view of having impartial love and compassion towards other living beings. Like we were saying yesterday, when we have a very biased mind and we're attached to some people such that we just daydream about them constantly, or we have antipathy towards other people such that we mull over how we're going to get even with them, those two things really disturb our ability to meditate. Okay, so we have to work with them. The third hindrance, okay, is lethargy and sleepiness. Anybody have that problem? Yeah? It's a very common problem in meditation. Okay? And it doesn't necessarily depend on how many hours of sleep you got the night before. Yeah. Many of us see that when we're active and we're doing things, we're wide awake. The moment we sit down like this to meditate, then, this incredibly, have you had that happen? This amazing kind of mental heaviness just overcomes you. You were awake a minute ago, vibrant, talking, it was great. And then you sit down to listen to teachings or meditate, and it's like your head got stuck in a bucket, You can't think clearly. You can't even keep your eyes open. You had that happen? Yeah, like I said, it's usually in the front row where everybody sees you. Yeah. Yeah. This summer I was leading a course and we were doing a discussion group, and I was bright, wide awake leading the course, fine putting out the questions for the discussion group. And then when everybody started talking, I was like, and I'm going, oh, it's like, I gotta stay awake. Come on, children. You don't want them to think you're drunk or something. And so I was wondering, did it show? Jana? Sam, did it show that I was falling asleep? Yeah. Okay, well, see, I told you it happens when you're in the front and everybody's looking. So, and of course, I was interested in what everybody had to say. But, my head was just in this bucket, it seemed like. Okay, so that happens. And we need, it doesn't always depend. During that course, it did have something to do. I wasn't getting enough sleep. So I did have a little bit of an excuse, but it wasn't totally that. Okay, so this is sometimes because of karma. In the past, we created certain negativities, and then that karma ripens in such a way that we just get this really weird kind of cloud effect where you can't stay awake. And so that can be indicative of needing to do some purification. Okay. And so that's also why it's very good to do the prostrations to the 35 Buddhas like you did in the morning, because on one hand, you're doing purification practice. On the other hand, you're moving your body, and moving your body helps you to stay awake. Although, when I lived in Nepal, there was one Italian monk who sometimes didn't make it to morning meditation. And my teacher was very strict. Everyone had to be at morning and evening meditation. He was completely emphatic about that. And so one day, he came in late, and people say, you were late again. Or no, he missed the whole session. And, well, what happened? What happened? Why did you miss? And he said, well, I was doing prostrations in my room, and he was doing the long prostrations. And I got down on the floor and I fell asleep. So, yeah, so it happens. Okay, so ways to counteract it. On a physical level, yeah, they say that, well, let's start with this. One way is, for example, if you're getting that lethargic feeling, like I said, do prostrations beforehand, get some exercise. Yeah, make sure you're looking long distances during the break time, and not just, having your nose in a book or sitting in a very dark room or something like that. In your meditation, if you're doing the breath, yeah, imagine that when you exhale, you're exhaling a smoky kind of unclear mind. And when you inhale, you're inhaling bright light. Okay? When you, I learned that when I teach this, there's an important element to mention, because one time one person said, well, I've been doing that, but I exhale all this smoke, and then it's just like stacking up in the room. I said, no, when you exhale, it vanishes. Okay, you're not polluting the room. You don't start coughing in your meditation because you think you're breathing in smoke. Okay, but it can be very helpful to think, that dark, heavy mind, I'm exhaling it and then inhaling bright light. Yeah. If you're doing the meditation on the Buddha, then make sure that the Buddha is at eye level. If you visualize him low, it's easy to get tired, or your mind gets slightly down while you're meditating. Remember I said to visualize him made of light? So make the light brighter. Yeah. And really think that when you're visualizing the Buddha, he's very bright light, and that some of his light is flowing into you and filling up your whole body and mind too. That will help to stay awake. Another thing is, before you come to the session, put water on your face, cold water. When you sit, make your body a little bit cold. Don't wear so many sweaters and jackets and put a blanket on top of your knees. Because if you make yourself too cozy and comfortable, it's easy to get drowsy during your meditation. One of my teachers had a very good way of doing this. He did it when we did puja with the young monks. And he took an offering bowl, one that's smaller than this, and they had to put it on their heads. And it had water in it. Yeah. So that was a very good impetus not to fall asleep during session. Okay. Okay. So just to separate between lethargy and sleepiness, lethargy manifests physically as a lack of physical energy and stamina, and it manifests mentally as a mental heaviness. The mind is dull and unclear and doesn't want to do anything. Okay, we feel bored, we don't have any energy. Sleepiness, because remember, this is lethargy and sleepiness. Sleepiness is drowsiness, where your five senses begin to absorb inside. Okay, so you can see that when you're trying to, you're starting to fall asleep, you're no longer hearing, if it's a guided meditation, you can't hear the instructions so well. Your senses are withdrawing. Okay. So these two are put together as one hindrance because they have similar causes, similar functions, and similar antidotes. So I just was describing a little bit the antidotes. Now, yesterday I read you some of the citations from Nagarjuna's The Commentary on the Great Perfection of Wisdom about sensual desire and about malice. And he also has something to say about lethargy and sleepiness. So, this is Nagarjuna. You get up. Don't lie there hugging that stinking corpse that is all sorts of impurities falsely designated as a person. That should wake you up. Okay, because that's what he's saying our body is. It's a stinking corpse, that we're very attached to. And, and we wanted it, so we got it. Yeah, and if we're not careful at the end of this life, we'll want another one and we'll get that one too. And then you wind up with bodies that get old and sick and die all the time. Okay. It's as if you've gotten a serious disease or been shot by an arrow, with such an accumulation of suffering and pain, how can you sleep? So he's saying, you're in samsara, kiddo. Look at what your situation is. And if that doesn't wake you up and make you want to do something so you don't have to continue being in samsara, then, what can we do? So he's saying, you get up. The entire world is burning up by the fire of death. Yeah, true, isn't it? Yeah, every day people die. People who were alive yesterday are not here today. Okay. There was another mass shooting yesterday. Yeah. But aside from that, there are many people who just died of old age, of sickness, of all sorts of things. Yeah. The mass shooting it was in Texas again. And Texas today is when some new laws come into effect, making it easier to carry guns into churches and schools. Yeah, that's what Texas is doing. But yesterday, the mass shooting, somebody got stopped for a traffic offense, we don't know what, and he started shooting the officer, and then he drove away and was driving down the highway between two cities, randomly shooting at people on the highway. Yeah. Until he wound up in a shopping center parking lot where they killed him. At one point, it sounds like he stole a U.S. post office vehicle and was riding in it too. Yeah. So, all those people, there were 5 people killed, at least 5 people killed, at least 21 people injured. Yeah, they don't really know the full thing yet. So, all those people woke up yesterday morning and, it was just a Saturday, Memorial Day weekend. We'll go out shopping. No, Labor Day weekend. We'll go out shopping. We'll do something fun with the family. No thought that they would die. Yeah, and then that happened. And then all the people who were sick, too, never thought they would die yesterday. I always thought, one more day, one more day. So this is Nagarjuna, you should be seeking means of escape from samsara, from this cycle of rebirth. How then can you sleep? You're like a person in shackles being led to his execution. With disastrous harm so imminent, how can you sleep? Because we always feel, death is a long way away, isn't it? Yeah, death happens to other people. And even if it happens to me, it's not going to happen for a long time. Yeah, really long time. And somehow I'm going to defy it. I'm going to be the longest living person on the planet. I'm going to set the record for, the longest life. With insurgent fetters not yet destroyed and their harm not yet averted, it's as if you were sleeping in a room with a venomous snake, and as if you have met up with the soldier's gleaming blades. At such a time, how can you sleep? Sleep is a vast darkness in which nothing is visible. Every day it deceives and steals away your clarity. When sleep blankets the mind, you are not aware of anything. With such great faults as these, how can you sleep? Okay, so that's one way to approach sleep. Yeah. To realize our situation and realize the good fortune we have and act on it now. Another way, they say, to when the mind gets lethargic and heavy is to think about one of the teachings that lightens the mind and brings you enthusiasm and hope. So, for example, thinking about our precious human life and how valuable it is to, practice the path and how fortunate we are to have it. Yeah. Or think about the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Yeah, when you do, it makes the mind very, very happy, very joyful. Okay, so these kinds of meditations. Also, I think thinking about the kindness of other living beings, it makes the mind happy. It elevates our energy. Yeah, so that these meditations that elevate the energy are very good to do if we're suffering from lethargy and sleepiness. Okay. So then Chinese monasteries have wake-up devices that some monastics use. We have one of them here. Yeah, we've never used it, but it's, there you can see there's a good reason. It's a stick, kind of two sticks together, and usually they'll have somebody, walking around in the meditation hall, and if you look like you're falling asleep, somebody will whack you. And often the meditators themselves, they will ask to come and be whacked. And so there's certain points, in the body where energy points, where if you're whacked there, on a physiological level, it will help. So there's certain places on the upper back and shoulders, they don't just kind of whack anywhere, but in certain places. And they say it works. I can imagine it works. Yeah. Okay. Then the next hindrance, again, has two parts to it, restlessness and regret. So again, they're combined into one hindrance, even though they're different mental factors, again, because they have a similar cause, a similar function, and a similar antidote. Okay, so both of them, restlessness and regret, in terms of their causes, they arise due to preoccupation with our relatives, our friends, our home, good time, loving companions, and things like that. And both function to make the mind unsettled and, agitated. And, developing concentration is the antidote to that. So if we look at restlessness in particular first, okay, it's a mental agitation that includes anxiety, fear, worry, apprehension, excitement. Okay, anybody here have those mental states? Yeah. Okay, I think nowadays too, especially anxiety, people get so anxious over things that aren't really important, I think because I think the media has a lot to do with it, and our educational system and our family, and we're all pushed. You have to be good and you have to be best. I was thinking about Melania's thing. It's called Be Best. Yeah. And I was thinking, in any group, only one person can be best. Yeah? That means that everybody else is not best, has failed in some way. And then you put it on yourself. Oh, I'm a failure because I'm not best. Okay. So that is totally psychologically unhealthy and also ridiculous. Yeah, it's a ridiculous kind of thought and a ridiculous way to compare ourselves to others. Because we think, I want to be best, and if I'm best, then I'm successful. But actually, when you're best, then you have the stress of trying to remain best. Yeah. And so especially, for athletes who are getting older and losing their energy, but you have the stress to remain best. Oh my goodness, that's really devastating. Yeah. Or whatever field you're in, you get an award, then you think, oh, how in the world am I going to maintain that? Yeah. Or you ace an exam and you think, how am I going to do that again? So whether you're the best or you're not the best, you're anxious. Okay? So I think, this whole thing of comparing ourselves to others is really very detrimental. Because we have different talents and abilities. And so rather than compare ourselves to others, I think it's better to get in touch with what we're good at and then use that. Because we can really drive ourselves crazy worrying about things, can't we? Yeah, something hasn't happened, and yet we're worried about it. So this is, you can see how restlessness and regret, share something in common. Yeah. On one hand, both of them take us into the past. Yeah. When you're restless, it's like, oh, I did this. It was so much fun. How can I do it again? Or, oh, I don't know. How did that happen? What did that event in the past mean? What did that person mean when they said that? Okay. And with regret, we also look in the past and we may say, oh my God, look what I said. No wonder I have problems. And look what I did. And, I had the chance to take that precept about not taking intoxicants and I didn't take it. And so I went out and celebrated not taking it. And, and wound up intoxicated and then wound up in a big mess afterwards. Yeah. One time we shared experiences in one course. Do you remember that? Where people told stories of what they did when they were intoxicated? That took a lot of courage. But we were all in the same boat and we laughed about it. But it wasn't funny at the time. Yeah. Because we do all sorts of stupid things, don't we? Yeah. So regret takes us back into the past in the same way. Sometimes it's worse. We regret our virtuous actions. Oh, I gave a donation to this charity, but now the family can't go out to dinner because I gave the money to a charity. Then you regret being generous. That destroys the merit completely. Okay. So restlessness and regret pull us in the past. They pull us in the future too. Okay. Restlessness. Oh, what can I do? Oh, the retreat ends tomorrow. I haven't had coffee in 3 days. Where's the nearest Starbucks from here? I'm going to get in the car and blast the radio and go to Starbucks. I've been in withdrawal for 2.5 days at this Buddhist place. Yeah, go out and have a steak. Yeah. And so the mind's really restless. She talked all the time about visualizing pizza. Now I want some. Um, yeah. So, that's a hint to the cook. So, what'd you say?
I said
Tuesday. Oh,
she's cooking Tuesday, so
probably not. Okay, we're having shepherd's pie, mushroom, corns, and Brussels sprouts again. It's very interesting living in a monastery because you know what you're going to have for lunch according to who's cooking that day. Yeah. Yeah. Some people, if they cook, you're having fried rice or you're having fried noodles and vegetables, So, right. So, yeah, other people, it's like, oh, we're going to have a stir fry today. And then other people, we're going to have lentils, cabbage, beans, and rice. Yeah. So, yeah. So restlessness takes us into the future too. Yeah. Wondering, what can I do? Regret can take us into the future too. It's like, oh, I did this in the past. What's the effect going to be in the future? And again, the mind's worried and so on. And so much distraction. Yeah. So we're probably all very familiar with that in our meditation, aren't we? Yeah. The mind goes off on amazing things. And especially if you do a very long retreat. Yeah. Then so much stuff comes up, and you wonder, how did all that stuff get in your mind to start with? Yeah. I mean, commercial jingles from when you were a kid comes up. You think of your grammar school friends. You have regret for something that happened decades ago. You start thinking of, should you try and look up all your high school boyfriends and girlfriends, and see if you can find them again after the retreat is over. The mind gets so restless. Yeah. So, then the meditation object is gone. Yeah. And gone beyond, but not to awakening. Okay. So, also with regret, when we regret past actions, sometimes we don't just regret them, but we go into guilt. Okay. And so there's a big difference between regret and guilt. Regret is, I'm sorry I did that. I made a mistake. I regret having done that. Okay. And that's healthy when we've regretted something in the past, or when we've done something in the past that we don't feel good about doing. It's very appropriate to regret it. Okay. But sometimes we take the next step and we go into guilt. I'm such a bad person because I've done that. So it's no longer I regret doing that action. It's I'm a bad person because I did that. And I'm not only a bad person, I'm the worst person. And I'm not only the worst person, I can't tell anybody about what I did. I don't want them to know, because nobody will like me if they know what I've done. Yeah. And so we sit there feeling horrible about ourselves and all bottled up, and it creates a lot of tension and really impedes us. And we have, again, from our Judaic Christian culture, this idea that the more we feel guilty, the more we are atoning for the negativity we did. So the more I can beat myself up and tell myself what a horrible, lousy, worthless person I am, the more I'm atoning for those things that I did that I don't feel good about having done. So that's the logic in quotation marks in our mind. But that's not how it works. Yeah, feeling guilty, beating ourselves up, telling ourselves we're worthless, it doesn't purify anything. Yeah, it only, immobilizes us and prevents us from going forward and doing something useful. Okay, so from a Buddhist viewpoint, regretting our misdeeds is a virtuous action. Feeling guilty about them is something to abandon. Okay, because guilt is a big hindrance. Okay, how many of you are former Catholics? Okay, former Jews? Still. Yeah. How about Protestants? Yeah. Who has the most guilt?
Mary Murphy says that the Jews may have invented guilt, but the Catholics perfected it.
Yeah. One retreat we had we broke down into groups and to discuss guilt. We had a discussion group about guilt. And at the end, there came out a kind of the Protestants lost, Yeah, but that was really before evangelical Protestant came. Well, no, it was still there then, but it wasn't as strong. Oh, okay. So you don't feel guilty about it because yeah, okay. So, yeah, but there was a little discussion between the Catholics and the Jews over who had more guilt. Yeah. The Jews are the chosen ones. We have more guilt. Yeah. So it was really interesting, to just see how you're raised and how you take in things that you were taught as a kid without, having the ability to really sit and think about, does that make sense or not? And so that's one of the nice things now is as adults to think about what makes sense and what do I really believe and what, is hogwash. Who invented the expression hogwash? It's not kosher. Yeah, yes.
I was just wondering if you happen to know, it seems like the word regret must be a different word in Sanskrit for these applications, like the regret in the five hindrances and the regret in doing purification seem very different.
It's the same word.
Really?
Yeah. But the when you, like I was saying, regretting our misdeeds is something virtuous. But it's still, when you're trying to develop concentration, it still takes you away from your object. Okay? That doesn't mean you shouldn't have regret. Yeah? That kind of regret is very healthy, and we need to purify our misdeeds, but do it in another session. Okay? And don't regret virtuous actions. Okay, so in terms of misdeeds, in terms of antidotes, watching our breath can be very helpful when our mind starts spinning with fear, anxiety, restlessness, regret. The mind is just totally unsettled, and just watching the breath can be very helpful. Okay, and also paying attention to our physical, verbal, and mental activities. If we really strengthen the mental factors of mindfulness and introspective awareness, then with mindfulness, we keep our mind on something positive, and with introspective awareness in the break times, too, we check what's going on in our mind. And if our mind has wandered off into, all this kind of rumination, we bring it back. Yeah. So, staying attentive to what's going on, what we're doing and saying and thinking is very important when we have restlessness and regret. And then also, just trying to remind ourselves the past has happened. It's not happening now. Yeah. The future is not happening now. So why transport my mind into a state of anxiety over something that's not happening now? If I open my eyes and I look where I am right now, I'm in a place with like-minded people that's peaceful. So let my mind be peaceful too. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's what Nagarjuna counsels for restlessness and regret. He says, if you feel regret for an offense, so if we've broken a precept, we've acted in ways that we don't feel good about, having regretted it, put it down and let it go. Okay, so we do the purification process. We regret our misdeeds. We change our attitude towards whoever we harmed. We do some kind of remedial action, and we make a determination not to do it again. So those 4 parts. And when we've done that, then we put it down. Now, it's true, we purify the same thing again and again, yeah. But each time we try to put it down to a greater and greater extent, okay? So if you feel regret for an offense, having regretted it, put it down and let it go. In this way, the mind abides peaceful and happy. Do not constantly remain attached to it in your thoughts. So don't sit there and beat yourself up thinking about what you did or what you should have done and you didn't do, because we regret not only what we did, but what we didn't do. Yeah, so don't remain attached to it, constantly going over and over and over it in your mind. If you possess the 2 kinds of regret of having not done what you should have done or having done what you should not have done, because this regret attaches to the mind, it is the mark of a foolish person. Okay, so when it goes into guilt and we start just, again, ruminating again and again, Yeah, it's really, like he says, it's the mark of a foolish person. So don't think the more I beat myself up and the worse I make myself feel, the more I'm purifying and atoning for it, because that's not what's going on. It is not the case that on account of feeling guilty, you will somehow be able to do what you failed to do. All of the ill deeds that you've already committed cannot be caused to become undone. Yeah. So sitting there and feeling guilty about them doesn't do anything. Better to regret, purify, make a determination to act differently in the future and go forward.
So I was reading in the book on the meditating on the breath to counteract discursive thoughts, 182, 183. I'm just a little curious. So it goes down to steps 5 and 6, which seem to get into pretty advanced things. But then right below it, it says the idea that go through all of the stages in a session. Is there a way to do that when you're not super advanced?
No, when you're really expert in it, then you can go through all the stages in one session. But most of us are at stage 1.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking in the part where you get obscuration on the mind. So if you don't know what you did, how to purify something that make your mind get sleepy or restless. Because I can purify, but when I don't know what I'm doing, it's like...
Okay. Yeah, so if you don't know specifically what you've done to purify, how can you purify? Well, they say, we've been born as everything in samsara and that we've done everything. So you can make a very vast regret. Any and all negative actions I've done, I regret them. Okay? Specifically when we feel tired and sleepy, I think some of the actions that may lie behind that is maybe in a previous life we disrespected the Dharma. Okay? And so that created the cause, not to be able to focus so well when we meditate. Or we disrespected Dharma items in some way. Maybe we called people names. We called them lazy bones or whatever, calling people names like that, or, chewing people out for being lazy. Then that's the kind of thing, it seems to me, that could ripen in our being quite lethargic. Or also in a previous life, just not fulfilling our responsibilities, being quite lazy, sleeping in, saying, well, I don't feel like doing it, so I just won't do it. And who cares if it's inconvenient for someone else? In fact, I don't even think about it being inconvenient for somebody else. I just think I don't feel like doing it and leave it like that. Okay. So I think that kind of attitude and actions done like that, they make the mind dull. Okay. So you can think about things in this life when we've done that. And then even we can't remember past lives. We can think, I could have done that in a past life. And then also always good when we purify and all the other negativities I've done too. Mm-hmm. Or I was thinking it could come too from avoiding the Dharma. Like maybe in a past life we had access to the teachings, but then we didn't go, or we slept through them, the whole teaching, or something like that. We preferred to lie in bed and oversleep. Yeah, so we didn't get up for morning meditation, or we went to morning meditation and for 5 minutes and then we left. Those kinds of things could contribute too.
So, something you brought up last night, which triggered something in me based on this hyperproductive society that we all live in, but that RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, even in the hospital with pancreatic cancer potentially, she was concerned with having a physical body, right? Because it prevented her from doing what she wanted to do. So then I think in my own self, when that lethargy or that the sleepiness comes up, what, in your opinion, what is the healthy balance of like rest, relaxation, caring for oneself, and foregoing your own needs in a way for the benefit of others?
Okay, I think it's something that each of us have to figure out for ourselves. And it's not something where you reach one conclusion and the conclusion is the right one forever and ever. I think it's a constant thing where we're coming back and rebalancing ourselves again and again. So, and it depends what you're doing too. Okay, so for example, there's certain things where there's a deadline and we have to do it. Otherwise, it becomes very inconvenient for other people. So on those things, I may not be in the mood to do it, but I nudge myself and I do it. Or if it's something really that I can't do, then I call the other people and I'm saying, like if I'm totally exhausted or whatever, I call and give them some notice in advance why I can't do it so they can find somebody else, or maybe I help them find somebody else who can do it. But then other times I know I can do it. I'm just lazy. So then I kind of nudge myself. Okay. And once I get going, I'm usually okay. Yeah, it's just the getting going part. Then there's other things like I write, okay, like these kinds of things. So, I've noticed that there's some days, it's very interesting. There's some days where the inspiration just isn't there. And there's some days when I'm lazy and I don't feel like sitting down and doing it. And there's a difference between those two. Yeah, it's easy to mush them together and give myself a reason to not write. But I have to see, when is it that, the energy just isn't there. Because I know, for example, in the evening, that's not always my best time. Sometimes it is. I'm invigorated to write. Sometimes it's not. So, okay, when it's one of those things where the energy isn't there, I leave it. I come back to it the next morning when I'm feeling more alert. Okay. But then other times, it's the morning time and I still don't feel right. And it's not that the energy is there. It's like, I want some distraction. Yeah. I don't want to sit down and really discipline my mind right now. I'd much rather read something. Yeah. So then, okay, if I read something that is still Dharma, that's okay. But if I'm reading something that's not, then I need to kind of discipline my mind and like, okay, yes, we're feeling lazy. Let's start doing this. And, yeah. Other times it's like that. And I know what I need to do is take a walk. So it's a thing of trial and error. When do I need to give myself a break? When do I need to nudge myself? Okay. And yeah, there's no one size fits all answer for this. Mm.